Right now, as you are listening to this, the sky is preparing for one of the strangest stretches of events in recent memory. A ring of fire is about to burn across the Antarctic sky. More than 1 billion people are preparing to welcome a rare zodiac year. The Winter Olympics are racing towards some of their biggest moments, and before this period is over, the moon will turn red while multiple planets gather across the evening sky. This is not science fiction. This is not a movie trailer. This is a real collision of astronomy, culture, history, and human drama. In the next hour, we are going to follow every thread. From the frozen silence of Antarctica, to the streets of Beijing and Tokyo, to Olympic ice in Italy, to the deep mechanics of the solar system itself. And by the end, one big question will remain. What does it mean when so many cycles seem to converge at once? Let's begin. The first event arrives over the loneliest place on Earth. On February 17, 2026, the moon moves directly between Earth and the sun. But this is not the kind of eclipse most people imagine. The sun will not vanish completely. The sky will not fall fully dark. Instead, because the moon is slightly farther from Earth than usual, it appears just a little too small to cover the whole sun. So when the alignment reaches its peak, a thin burning circle of sunlight remains visible around the moon's black silhouette. A perfect ring, a ring of fire. The path of this annular eclipse sweeps across Antarctica and the surrounding Southern Ocean, far from cities, roads, and crowds. Most of the world will never see it directly. There will be no massive viewing parties, no packed stadiums, no highways lined with eclipse glasses. Instead, the witnesses are likely to be a small number of researchers scattered across one of the harshest landscapes on the planet, standing in brutal cold beneath a dimmed polar sun. Imagine that scene. The wind cuts across the ice. The horizon seems endless. The light begins to change, not all at once, but enough to feel wrong. Enough to make the world look drained and sharpened at the same time. Shadows grow strange. The ice turns blue-white under a weakened sun. And then, for a brief window, the sky holds a bright ring suspended above a silent continent. That image alone would be enough to make this period unforgettable. But the eclipse matters for another reason. It is part of a much larger pattern. Eclipses are not random. They follow rules. They belong to repeating families. This one comes from Saros Series 121, part of a cycle known to astronomers for thousands of years. Roughly every 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, a very similar eclipse returns. The geometry is not perfectly identical, but it is close enough that ancient skywatchers recognized the pattern long before modern space science existed. That means this moment over Antarctica is not an isolated accident. It is one link in a chain stretching across centuries. The same cosmic rhythm was active when medieval kingdoms were still rising. It continued through empires, revolutions, world wars, and the modern age. And now it appears again in 2026, still obeying the same quiet mathematics. There is something deeply humbling about that. We tend to think of dramatic sky events as interruptions, but from the universe's perspective, they are routine. The surprise belongs to us. The pattern belongs to the cosmos. And Antarctica, strange as it sounds, is exactly where this eclipse was heading. Because eclipse paths drift over time. They migrate. They move pole to pole across long cycles. This family began near the north, then slowly shifted southward over centuries. By 2026, it has reached the bottom of the world. So no, Antarctica is not a random stage. It is the destination. Now right around here, about 3 minutes in, let me say this. If you enjoy stories that connect history, science, and the sky in a way that actually feels alive, subscribe to the channel and stay with me all the way to the end. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and whether you have ever seen an eclipse in person. I always love reading where in the world these stories are reaching people, because this is only the first layer. The eclipse over Antarctica is not the whole story. It is the opening move. To understand why, we need to shift from astronomy to the calendar. The very same new moon that helps create this eclipse also marks the beginning of Lunar New Year for a huge part of the world. That is where the story becomes even more fascinating. For more than 1 billion people, this date is not mainly about an eclipse. It is about renewal, family, travel, memory, ritual. The old year closes, the new one begins. Homes are cleaned, red decorations go up, tables fill with symbolic foods, fireworks explode across major cities, train stations overflow, airports pulse with movement. Entire nations seem to inhale and exhale together. And in 2026, the new year carries an extra layer of weight. It is the year of the fire horse. To understand why that matters, you have to understand how the zodiac cycle works. The popular version is simple. 12 animals repeating every 12 years. Rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, rooster, dog, pig. But the deeper system is more complex. Each year also pairs with one of 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. When you combine the 12 animals with the 5 elements, you get a 60-year cycle before the exact same combination returns. So 2026 is not just another horse year. It is the fire horse year. The last one was 1966. The one before that was 1906. The one before that was 1846. In much of East Asia, that sounds powerful, energetic, even exciting. The horse suggests movement, freedom, force, momentum. Fire adds intensity, boldness, passion, and transformation. Put them together, and the image is explosive in the best sense. A year of motion, a year of heat. A year that feels like it wants to push history forward. But in Japan, the fire horse carries a darker reputation. And this is where the script turns from celestial wonder into social. Centuries ago, a superstition took hold that girls born in a fire horse year would be too headstrong, too dangerous, too disruptive to family life. Over time, that belief merged with legend, theater, storytelling, and social pressure until it became something far more powerful than a simple folk idea. By the 20th century, the superstition still had enough force to shape real behavior. And in 1966, when the previous fire horse year arrived, the result was astonishing. Japan's birth rate plunged. Not by a tiny amount, by about a quarter. Think about that. An industrialized, modern, educated nation experienced a dramatic demographic dip because huge numbers of families did not want daughters born under that sign. Some delayed pregnancy, some ended pregnancies, some reportedly altered birth registrations to avoid the stigma. It left a visible notch in the country's population pattern. That is one of the most revealing parts of this whole story. We like to imagine that modernity erases superstition, but history is rarely that simple. Technology changes quickly, cultural memory does not. And so the return of the fire horse in 2026 raises a strange question. Will anything like that happen again? Probably not on the same scale. Japan is very different now. Marriage patterns are different. Social attitudes are different. Family planning is different. The old stigma has weakened. But even if the practical effect is small, the return of the year still reopens the conversation. It reminds people that beliefs can survive long after the world around them has changed. Meanwhile, outside Japan, the mood is far more celebratory. Across China, Vietnam, Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, and communities around the globe, the holiday arrives with light, food, movement, and reunion. In China, reunion dinners gather families around fish, dumplings, rice cakes, and oranges, each carrying symbolic meaning. Fireworks crack through the night. Red banners mark doorways. The entire holiday is built around the idea of clearing away misfortune and welcoming luck. In Vietnam, Tet carries deep emotional weight, tied to ancestors, homecoming, and remembrance. In Korea, Seollal centers on family respect, ritual, and the sharing of traditional meals. And across global cities, from New York to London to Sydney, Lunar New Year celebrations fill streets with lion dances, drums, lanterns, and crowds. So on the exact same day that a ring of fire forms over Antarctica, fireworks burst above packed city streets. The moon's alignment means two different things at once. In one place, it darkens the sun. In another, it starts the year. That overlap is the heartbeat of this whole story. One sky, different meanings, same moon. And while all of this is happening, another giant human spectacle is already underway. Thousands of kilometers away, in northern Italy, the 2026 Winter Olympics are in full swing. This part matters because it adds a completely different clock to the story. The sky moves on ancient cycles. The Olympics move on human seconds, hundredths of seconds, milliseconds. Milano and Cortina are hosting the games together, splitting the world of winter sport between indoor arenas and mountain venues. Figure skating, speed skating, hockey, alpine skiing, luge, skeleton, bobsled, cross-country skiing, biathlon. Event after event, athletes are pushing bodies and nerves to their limit. And that is what makes the Olympics fit so well into this larger narrative. Everything about the Games is time. An athlete trains for years to change a result by a fraction of a second. A skier risks everything for a line through one turn. A figure skater builds an entire career around a performance lasting only minutes. A speed skater fights the clock directly, blade against ice, breath against pain. Human ambition becomes visible in its purest form. You can almost reduce it to one sentence. How much can a person do with one moment? That question sounds very different when you put it next to the eclipse, because the eclipse asks the opposite. How long can a pattern endure? The Olympics are about the small scale of time. The eclipse is about the large scale. And here in February 2026, those clocks are ticking side by side. An athlete wins gold by 400ths of a second, while an eclipse family unfolds on an 18-year cycle. A zodiac year returns after 60 years. A lunar phase shifts over 5 days. A planet circles the sun in 88 days. Another takes more than 160 years. Fast clocks and slow clocks, human urgency and cosmic patience, all crossing at once. Now from here, the story turns back upward. Because the Antarctic eclipse is not alone, it opens an eclipse season. Most people think of eclipses as single events, but that is not usually how they work. They come in windows. When the geometry between Earth, Moon, and Sun lines up near the Moon's orbital nodes, you can get a solar eclipse at new moon and a lunar eclipse at full moon within about 2 weeks of each. That is exactly what happens here. The ring of fire arrives first. Then, 2 weeks later, the moon turns red. This second event is the one most people will actually be able to see. A total lunar eclipse is generous in a way a solar eclipse is not. You do not have to be in one narrow path. Half the night side of Earth can watch it. The moon enters Earth's shadow, and slowly the bright full disk darkens. A curved bite appears, the shadow grows, and then totality begins. This is where the blood moon appears, but the phrase can sound more mystical than the reality. The moon turns red because Earth's atmosphere bends sunlight into the shadow. Blue light scatters away. Red and orange wavelengths survive the trip. That filtered light reaches the moon, painting it copper, crimson, or deep rust, depending on atmospheric conditions. In other words, a blood moon is not the moon glowing by itself. It is the color of every sunrise and sunset on Earth, projected into space. That may be even more beautiful than the myth. Imagine standing on the moon during a total lunar eclipse and looking back at Earth. You would see a dark globe blocking the sun, edged by a thin ring of glowing red atmosphere. Every dawn and dusk on Earth at once. That ring of filtered light is what reaches the lunar surface and sends the red glow back to us. So when the moon turns red, you are looking at Earth's atmosphere writing itself onto another world. And there is one more layer of symbolism here. This particular lunar eclipse lands during the Lantern Festival, the traditional closing of the Lunar New Year season, held under the first full moon of the year. So in 2026, lanterns rise through city streets while the full moon above them darkens and turns red. A festival of light beneath a dimmed moon, a perfect closing image for a season already filled with overlap. But the sky still is not finished, because between the eclipse and the blood moon comes another event people love to call a planetary parade. Before February ends, multiple planets appear in the evening sky at once, stretched across the ecliptic from west to east. Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Jupiter all take part in the display, though not all are equally easy to see. This is where it helps to be honest. The headlines often oversell events like this. They make it sound like 6 bright worlds will be stacked close together in a dramatic row, impossible to miss. That is not really what the sky looks like. In reality, 3 planets are easy stars of the show. Venus blazes in the west. Jupiter dominates high in the evening sky. Saturn can be picked out with less difficulty. Mercury is possible, but low and tricky near the horizon. Uranus and Neptune are there too, but for most people they are binocular or telescope objects. So the wonder is real, but it is a quieter wonder, not a fireworks display, more like a treasure hunt. And that matters, because the real beauty of a planetary alignment is not just visual, it is conceptual. When you spot these planets in a single evening, you are looking at multiple worlds sharing one system. You are seeing your neighborhood each one follows its own clock. Mercury races through its year. Neptune crawls through a 165-year orbit. They are not physically lined up like beads on a wire. That almost never happens in a perfect way. They only appear gathered from our point of view because all the planets orbit in roughly the same flat plane around the Sun. That plane draws a path across our sky called the ecliptic. The Sun follows it. The Moon stays near it. The planets stay near it. And when several happen to occupy the same general side of the solar system, Earth sees them stretched along that line. So a planetary alignment is really a lesson in perspective. It reminds you that astronomy is full of appearances that reveal something deeper. What looks like a parade is actually a map. What looks like a row of lights is actually a system of worlds. There is another detail people rarely think about. When you look at all those planets, you are not seeing a single moment. You are seeing different moments stitched together by light travel time. The light from Venus took only minutes to arrive. The light from Jupiter took much longer. Neptune's light has been on the way for hours, so the sky is always slightly historical. Even in one glance, you are looking into several pasts at once. That idea fits the whole month perfectly. Everything here is layered in time. Ancient myths and modern data. Olympic stopwatches and orbital cycles. A contemporary festival and a superstition rooted in the 17th century. A red moon caused by atmospheric scattering and described by generations as an omen. This is why people respond so strongly to alignments, eclipses, and blood moons, even if they do not believe in astrology or prophecy. The feeling is real, not because the sky is sending personal messages, but because the sky briefly makes scale visible. Most days we live inside our own schedule. Work, messages, meals, sleep, plans. A week feels big, a year feels huge. Then an event like this arrives and suddenly you can feel multiple forms of time at once. The month, the season, the 18-year eclipse cycle, the 60-year zodiac return, the centuries of cultural memory attached to one moon phase, the billions of years over which planets have followed the same star. And suddenly human life looks both smaller and more meaningful. Smaller because the universe is clearly not organized around us. More meaningful because we are capable of noticing it. That may be the most extraordinary part of all. The eclipse does not care whether anyone watches. The planets do not rearrange themselves for our benefit. The moon does not turn red to send a warning. These are simply consequences of motion, gravity, geometry, and light. But humans take those raw events and build meaning around them. We write myths. We create festivals. We schedule journeys home. We measure athletic greatness. We remember old fears. We stand under the sky and tell stories that connect our brief lives to something larger. That is what this whole stretch of time reveals. Not just what the universe is doing, but what human beings do with what the universe gives them. A few researchers on Antarctic ice watch sunlight turn into a burning ring. Families gather under red lanterns to welcome a new year. Athletes throw everything into one final run, one final jump, one final lap. Millions step outside and look up as the moon darkens and reddens. Others trace planets across the twilight and realize, maybe for the first time, that the solar system is not an abstract diagram. It is a real place, and we live inside it. So what happens when overlapping cycles converge in a single window of time? Maybe the answer is not that fate changes. Maybe the answer is that attention changes. For a brief period, people look up, people notice, the ordinary scale of daily life breaks open, and for a moment, the world feels connected. History to science, myth to measurement, one continent to another, one person to the night sky. The ring of fire fades, the fireworks burn out, the Olympic medals are awarded, the blood moon brightens and passes, the planetary parade slowly dissolves as each world continues on its own path, and yet something remains. The reminder that we live inside patterns far older than ourselves, and also inside stories that only exist because we are here to tell them. That is the real convergence. Not just in the sky, but between the universe and human meaning. If you made it this far, subscribe to the channel for more long-form stories where science, history, and the hidden patterns of the world come together. And if you want, tell me in the comments which of these events you would most want to witness in person. The Ring of Fire, the Blood Moon, the planetary alignment, or Lunar New Year under a sky full of lanterns. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next story.